Happy Friday, everyone. Half of your Elite Eight is set. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. You are listening to special bonus coverage of Go Big or Go Home, NCAA style. Kevin, I have no idea why I'm excited. I have no idea why I'm in a good mood. My bracket after last night, I literally ripped the thing in four. 3 of those 4 pieces in the garbage, 1 piece teetering on the ledge of the garbage can. My bracket, darn near busted, bad, terrible. I'm putting a Twitter poll out later at TroyRobert967 about how are you doing with your bracket. And there's going to be a couple easy answers. I have a chance to win it, maybe still alive, or just suck. That's going to be my third choice, just suck. And you know what I'm going to answer? Just suck. I mean, I still have a chance. I have UCLA. But to be honest, like last night, my pick with Purdue and Kansas, I don't feel real good about UCLA. I do, but I don't. The way my bracket's going, UCLA is not winning. So before we get into that talk, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. My bracket, I was telling you before the show, I think this is the worst bracket that I've filled out. And this is one of the years where I've watched the most college basketball I ever have. It's certainly in the top 5. And here I am, the Elite Eight, half of it's set. I got Kansas. I got Gonzaga. I think if you've got Gonzaga in your Final Four, I think that's a really good thing. If you don't have Villanova or Duke winning the whole thing, or Arizona, obviously, which was my trouble. But if you've got Gonzaga in the Final Four and your title pick is still alive, I think you're doing pretty good because at this point there hasn't been, I guess, too much craziness outside of the East and Villanova and Duke being gone. So obviously everyone's East is, no one's got the East Final Four right. But from the West, if you stayed away from Gonzaga, which it seems like probably most people did, whether Gonzaga was losing in the Sweet 16 or losing in the Elite Eight to Arizona, most people I don't think have Gonzaga in the Final Four. But if you do, I think it's looking pretty good right now. And if you got your title pick still going, which I don't, you might be sitting pretty in your bracket pool.
No, I still have my title guy, Kevin, but I'm not sitting pretty. I mean, let's put it this way. It still says points remaining, the PPR, that I could win. But it's kind of like one of those teams fighting for a playoff berth. Like, I need everything for the rest of the weekend to go right, and I need a lot of help. So, but here's the problem. If things go right for me, it's going to help other people too. So I'm kind of screwed. I mean, like I said, I should just man up, take that 4th piece of my bracket and just crumple it up and just throw it away and not worry about it anymore. I'll tell you what, Kevin, it all started off on a bad note. I picked Michigan to get to the Elite Eight, and they played an Oregon team that they haven't been the same since Boucher's been out. And yet, I think Michigan found a way to lose last night, Kevin. They didn't play well. They should have been. If it was a Kansas team, that would have been the same score, Kansas versus Michigan. Michigan did not play well. We were texting during the game, and did they ever run an offensive set? They were coming down, jacking up shots like it was the playground. And we joked about offensive rebounds, and I know they were limited, but then what happens in the last 10 seconds? Oregon gets a huge offensive rebound. I mean, this was just, to me, a very sloppy game, not just Michigan's part, but Oregon's part. Oregon should be damn lucky that they beat Michigan the way that they played. Neither team has to be happy with the way they played yesterday, but somebody had to win. And Oregon win, and still Michigan, as poorly as they played, they had a shot at the end, a 3-pointer to try to win. I thought he should have drove to the hoop to try to get a foul, but who am I? I knew that wasn't going to happen. They've been cranking up 3-pointers, and there was time where they hit a few to get back in the game or take the lead, but overall their 3-point shooting was horrid. Their defense wasn't very good. I mean, defensive rebounding was okay, but they got beat up inside too, Kevin. Oregon had the post advantage in this game, and it was honestly a hard game to watch. It was so sloppy. What were your thoughts on that game?
I'm with you. Michigan, and while we were texting during this game, I said Michigan had only shot the three ball well in one game since the Big Ten tournament started. They hadn't been shooting the three ball well at all during this stretch. They won 4 games in 4 days to win the Big Ten tournament. They shot the three ball fine, I think, once, and the other 3 games it wasn't fine, or twice. I think Wisconsin, they shot it fine as well. They didn't shoot great, as far as I can remember. And from the field, though, they were shooting, 50, 51, 52%. So they were, doing just fine. Defensively, rebounding-wise, they were keeping up with Purdue's, Wisconsin's on the boards. Defensively, they were holding teams down. Rebounding-wise in this game, they got out-rebounded, but it wasn't by a ton. Problem was, like you mentioned, offensive rebounds. They only had 2. Oregon only had 6. So, again, this was not a beautifully played game. And when looking ahead to Oregon-Kansas, there's always one team. Once you get past the first weekend, and it's the Sweet 16, there's always one team that you're like, okay, this team now in the Elite Eight, they look like a freaking powerhouse. Like, who's actually going to stop them? And that, to me, is Kansas. We'll talk about Kansas-Purdue, but Kansas playing whoever, Michigan or Oregon, came out of this game. I mean, neither team played well, and Kansas looks like the best team in the country without a question at this point. So, Michigan played well defensively, but the problem was Oregon was getting easy buckets once the 5-minute mark hit inside. So Michigan was playing fine defensively until that 5-minute mark, and then they started getting hot with 5 minutes left, but then, a minute left, and Michigan starts missing shots. And like you said, they just never played really well offensively. Whether you get hot and you hit, 4 or 5, I think they had 5 or 6 made shots in a row down the stretch there, and then they went cold to end the game. But Michigan just didn't run offense. I didn't remember one single offensive play, offensive set that just, took 15, 20 seconds in the shot clock and they got a good look off of it. I can't remember one. And that's the problem. Michigan just didn't run offense.
I want to go a little rant. I know you like when I go on my little rant. So I listened to the post-game press conference, and I love the national media. Did they watch the game? The comment was, not a lot of offensive rebounds in the first half, but you picked it up in the second half. What? You had 6 offensive rebounds. How did you pick up offensive rebounding in the second half? Did you just watch the same second half that I did? There were no offensive rebounds hardly until the end of the game. So you're going to get that one offensive rebound and you picked it up in the second half? I started laughing at myself, Kevin. Like, did you really just ask that question? Did you look at the number of offensive rebounds? Because it was pretty much null and void. 6 and 2, Kevin, those are usually first half numbers for offensive rebounds for a game. That was a total 40 minutes. So you credit the defense in a sense that, hey, we were limiting second chance points, and that's the problem for Michigan. They needed to. They needed to pick up that pace. They needed to pick up the offensive rebounding, and they didn't. So, I had a little rant about national media. Did you really just ask that because there was one offensive rebound at the end of the game? That's ridiculous. So I started laughing. But let's move on to Purdue, Kansas, my other game where all of a sudden the other part of my heart just got ripped out. So it's one of those things. I don't know. I'm sitting here on Friday morning like, who do I cheer for now? Because Kansas looks unbeatable.
Yeah, 98-66. This game, first half, Purdue was great offensively. They put up 40 points. If you score 80 against anyone, that's really strong. Kansas, not a bad defensive team whatsoever. You put 80 up on Kansas, that's solid. No question about it. But they were still down 47-40. Second half, Purdue definitely cooled off, and Kansas just kept scoring. They put up 51 points in the second half, and with 6 minutes left in the game, Kansas was starting to melt the clock. And they still scored 98 points on Purdue. 6 minutes left. They were running it down to 10 seconds before they started their offense, a.k.a. just drive to the hole and see what happens. But Kansas at this point scored 100 in the first round, 90 in the second round against Michigan State, won by 20, and now they beat Purdue by 32 points, and they scored 98 points. So this Kansas team just – I don't care that they're not the most complete team. I think down low they're still lacking, but I think Carolina's a more complete team. I think Gonzaga's a more complete team. But Kansas's offense can't be stopped right now. And so UCLA, we talked about the juggernaut UCLA offense in this tournament, and that's why we both have them playing in the title game. But at this point, Kansas definitely has the better guards. Frank Mason, as a senior, is as good, probably better than Lonzo Ball is. Lonzo Ball's a freshman. Give Lonzo Ball 3 years, I'm sure he'll be better, but that's the way college works. So Kansas has an basically unstoppable point guard right now. They've got a two-guard in Graham who can shoot, get to the basket. Same with Mason. Their wing is going to be a top 5 pick in Josh Jackson. Shoot, get to the basket, rebound, can pass, can play defense. McCalloch can also shoot for Kansas. He can also somewhat drive. He's not inept at driving the ball to the basket. So this Kansas team has a couple big bodies who are just, fill-ins, in my opinion. But it doesn't matter. As long as you don't get annihilated on the inside for the entire game, which Purdue did in the first half. They pounded it to Swanigan, and Swanigan was hitting threes even. And Haas was doing his thing on the inside for, a 5-10 minute stretch there in the first half. But Kansas's offense just can't be stopped. It's going to have to take a really strong defensive performance from someone, and they're going to have to get hot from three. So Oregon, if they play their game, they can play really well defensively. And Oregon can absolutely stroke it from three. They were up on Arizona during the regular season by like 30, 40 points at one point because they were just knocking in every single three possible. They're like 16-21 from three, and that wasn't even the final stat line. So they made like 18, 19 threes in that game. So Oregon is capable of beating this Kansas team, but you've got to play incredible defense, and you've got to hit threes out of your mind. So that's the recipe it's going to take to beat Kansas. At this point, I see Kansas winning the whole thing.
Well, I'm going to add one thing to your recipe. Oregon has to stay out of foul trouble, which they did against Michigan. They have to be able to keep playing those six guys. If they get in foul trouble, that's where the problem is going to occur. That's where I thought the problem would occur in the tournament, and it hasn't. They've been playing very smart, and maybe they know that. Maybe they know they can't get in foul trouble, and so maybe at times they're not playing as aggressive as they could or should on defense. But it hasn't hurt them to this point, Kev. They've stayed out of foul trouble. They've stuck to their six-man rotation, and like you said, Michigan runs six because they want to, not because they have to. Oregon has to run six. So if they get in foul trouble, that's where I see a big problem against Kansas. I think they can keep it close for a little bit, but unbelievably, I thought Purdue could keep it close too, and Kansas just took off. You looked at tournament time. I wasn't completely sold on Kansas. I am completely sold on Kansas. I told you this before they played Purdue. I think I made the wrong pick, the way that they played the first two games. So right now, if you have Kansas winning this whole thing, you're probably licking your chops because this team is clicking. Literally clicking, playing good basketball. That's what you need to do. This is that part where we said, Kevin, now you get to play again a day later. It's not like you have a week to wait. So I feel bad for Oregon. I do. I think they have a fighter's chance, but Kansas is just too good right now. Let's move down to a place where there's no guard play. Well, there's guard play, but not, in my mind, wonder why this team has made it to the Elite Eight, and that's Xavier. The Xavier team, Kevin, with no true point guard to run the offense, but Blewett has picked this team up, put them on his shoulders, and said, come on, ride the Blewett train. Here we go. We're going to try to get all the way to the Final Four. I don't think they're going to get by Gonzaga, but, man, Xavier has, and I don't even want to put it this way that they've impressed. What I'm more impressed with is how the hell they've done this without a point guard, a true point guard. They've looked at times shaky against the press, and how do you break the press if you don't have great guard play? I don't know. But Xavier's doing it, Kevin. They did it, and Arizona did not look like an Arizona team that we have seen in the past. I mentioned to you before the show, maybe they overlooked Xavier. You had mentioned, well, Gonzaga just won, so you're thinking about the rematch. I really think that had something to do with it. I think they saw Xavier come in, say, hey, their guard play, our guards are 100 times better. We'll take care of business. Xavier just never went away.
No, they didn't. And we talked about O'Mara against Maryland, and he kind of did his thing in this game as well. And I said before this game started that Arizona's got the advantage everywhere except probably the Blewett matchup individually. And Blewett had 18 in the first half, 25 in the game. 75 points in 3 games this NCAA tournament. He's, like you said, he's carrying the load for Xavier. But I was flat out wrong in this game. I thought Zona would win by double digits. I thought they had easily the more complete team. But like you mentioned that I said before the show, I mean, Arizona played Gonzaga early this regular season and before conference play started, and Gonzaga beat Arizona. Zona didn't have a couple of their starters in that game. So there's no question that when these two teams saw themselves on the top 2 lines in the West region, that they were looking forward to the regional final. I don't think that was a question. Obviously, you take your opponent seriously, and Gonzaga did with West Virginia. I love that Gonzaga had a week to prepare for West Virginia. If they didn't, it could have spelled trouble. Xavier was all ready to go for this Arizona game. They're the only team, or I guess they were the road team in a sense that they had to travel out west and get Arizona out west. And Arizona, I think, was looking a little past Xavier toward Gonzaga, toward that rematch, saying, we've got our full team now, we're ready to go. But Zona just didn't they didn't show up, they didn't play their game, they were jacking threes. Xavier sit in a zone, and Arizona was shooting threes. They shot 27 of them, they made 7. So Arizona played right into Xavier's hands. Xavier wanted them to be out of sorts, they wanted them to chuck threes, and as long as they didn't hit a ton of them, Xavier was going to win. And realistically, I mean, all Arizona had to do was hit 1 or 2 more. One more, and, you could say Arizona would win the game by 1 point, technically, since Xavier won by 2. But who knows how that would have played out. But if Zona would have had an average shooting night from 3, I think they probably would have won. But Xavier sat in their zone, and Arizona didn't do anything to get them out of the zone. And so Alonzo Trier did everything he could, but 8 of 19 from the field. I mean, he had 19 points, 9 rebounds, but 8 of 19 from the field isn't efficient. This Arizona team didn't run their offense. They shot a bunch of threes. They missed them. Couldn't stop Blewett in the first half especially. So this Arizona team did not look like the team I picked to win the entire thing. So I was just wrong. Flat out.
Yeah. Well, we've been wrong the whole time. It's funny, Kevin. We're doing a Big Ten show. It's been all basketball. You would have think that we would have been somewhat, I don't know what the word is, somewhat intelligent in our picks. And man, we're not doing so well, even in our own bracket that we had, young versus old. We're sitting like a few rows down there. So that's not a really good thing. But I'm going to go to the Gonzaga West Virginia game. I had texted you. We had ranted about the fan that said West Virginia is more talented on paper. They're going to beat Gonzaga. We didn't agree with the statement, but we agreed that West Virginia would be able to give them a game just due to the style of play. And I'll tell you what, West Virginia did give Gonzaga all they could handle, Kevin. But like you said, you have a week to prepare for these games. You're not turning around in 24 hours and having to play. So they could prepare for the press. And they're a good team. They can break the press. And so I didn't think Gonzaga would falter here. And, again, of course, we both thought Gonzaga would falter and not get past Arizona. But I give credit to West Virginia. They hung right in there. They had a chance to win this game near the end, and that's all you want when you're a team. You want an opportunity to be in the game in that final 5 minutes and see what rolls out. And Gonzaga just pulled this one out. But it was a good game, Kevin. West Virginia played their style, and Gonzaga, they're a talented team.
Gonzaga's a 1 seed for a reason. You don't just get a 1 seed for a reason. If you're a mid-major, you need 30 wins. You need 1, 2, an undefeated regular season to get on that 1 line if you're not playing a strong out-of-conference schedule, which, again, Gonzaga did. They beat Florida. They beat Iowa State. They beat Arizona. So they played teams. They They might not have been as good as they are now, although Florida is better than they are now because of the injury they had on the inside. But Gonzaga tested themselves in the non-conference as much as they could. And you play against a good defensive Northwestern team. Gonzaga puts up 79 points. But in the first round, they only scored 66 against South Dakota State. In this game against West Virginia, they scored 61, but they're winning games. So you win your first round game, there was some struggle, but then you flex your muscles. The second round game, Gonzaga was up by 20, and then Northwestern made it a close game at the end. This West Virginia game, Gonzaga proved to me why they are capable of winning a title, because of their defense. Like I said, coming into this tournament, and I wrote an article about Gonzaga a month ago saying that this Gonzaga team can win a title because this is the best defensive team that Gonzaga has ever had. And I think you're seeing it now, especially in this West Virginia game. West Virginia is not a good shooting team, but usually they can turn you over, get points, so they'll score in the 70s. But holding West Virginia to 58 points, West Virginia shot 26% from the field. West Virginia shot 21% from three. That's why Gonzaga is legit. That's why they're a 1 seed. That's why they're my pick to get to the title game at this point if I had to re-pick my bracket, because I like Gonzaga as a team over Xavier, despite what Xavier's been doing. I think Xavier's zone will be able to give Gonzaga some troubles, but as long as Gonzaga has an average shooting night from three, they should win. Xavier should not score in the 80s. Xavier put up 91 against Florida State, but Florida State's been up and down. Xavier put up 73 against Arizona. I fully expect another low 70s, maybe high 60s against Gonzaga, because Gonzaga plays real defense. So I like Gonzaga to get to the Final Four. I think Gonzaga is the better team out of Wisconsin, Florida, Baylor, South Carolina in the East. So at this point, I'm liking Kansas-Gonzaga. I think Oregon can give Kansas a run if Oregon plays a great game. I think Carolina's a complete team. They could give Kansas a run. I think UCLA could certainly give Kansas a run because they're a complete team with a juggernaut offense. But Kansas is the favorite to me. Gonzaga right now with these 6 teams left on the left side of the bracket, they're the most complete team. They play dominant defense. They've got a true leader at point guard. They got guys that can shoot. They've got NBA bigs. This Gonzaga team, to me, is ready to get to the title game.
So, Kevin, you're already giving North Carolina and UCLA the prompts against Kansas. You got North Carolina versus Butler. I'm not even giving Butler a chance in this. So you know what that means? That means Butler's winning today. Because I'm not saying Butler has a chance. If you're a Butler fan, you're loving me right now. Because everybody else that I've not given a chance to win in this tournament has won, Kevin. So that means Butler's going to knock off North Carolina. And then the game at the bottom, UCLA and Kentucky, that really is a coin flip. I mean, I know UCLA. I have them to win the whole thing. I need to cheer for UCLA, but Kentucky could win this game. I mean, this is not a UCLA team that I think can just show up on the court and is going to take care of Kentucky. Kentucky's a decent team that could derail UCLA. I just think UCLA has too much firepower, but that. If Kentucky plays really good defense, UCLA has a bad shooting night, it could very easily be a Kentucky win. But I agree with you. North Carolina should get to that Elite Eight. They should have no problem with Butler, which means Butler's going to win, because I think North Carolina's going to win. But then you look at it, and you look at those 3 teams, Kevin, North Carolina, UCLA, Kentucky, matched up against Kansas. Even right now, the way Kansas is playing, I mean, you can't bet against them at this point. Let's move up into the upper left part of this bracket where it's really messed up, Kevin. You got a Florida-Wisconsin game tonight, and because of this game being at 10 o'clock Eastern time, I've got to redo my whole sleep schedule because I work for Pesky on the weekend yet. And that means I've got to be at my store probably about 4 in the morning. Well, I can't watch Wisconsin, Florida, go to bed at 1 o'clock and get up and actually function. So today's sleep schedule has changed completely. I'm making dinner, going to bed, getting up at 9:45, watching the game, and going directly to work. How about that as a basketball guy? I'm going to tape the other games, but I've got to watch Wisconsin, Florida because I'm now just a Badger fan. I didn't think they'd get this far, so now I'm going to be a true fan. But even being a fan and a /analyst, I think Wisconsin has enough the way they've played. They've had a week to prepare. Maybe that's bad because they were playing really well, but I think Wisconsin has enough to get by Florida. What are your thoughts?
I was going to say, you're going to miss the Baylor South Carolina epic showdown, but you said you would tape, and even, I don't even plan on watching every single second of that Baylor South Carolina game. That just has zero fandom interest in me, and watching those two offenses is not pretty. Baylor wins on defense. South Carolina wins on defense. South Carolina can obviously put up points randomly half by half in this tournament somehow because they're not a good offense. Statistics show it. When you rank in the 200th in teams in Division I basketball, you're not a good offense over the course of the whole season. So it's just random what South Carolina is doing. I don't have much intrigue in that matchup, but this Florida-Wisconsin one, I mean, obviously living in Wisconsin for a little over a decade, and me living in Florida now and just being a part of this Big Ten show, obviously there's interest there. So I'm with you that I like Wisconsin to move forward, and I think Wisconsin's the most complete team, I suppose, out of these four. Not to throw shade on Wisconsin, but there's a reason why they were an 8 seed. Obviously, we both think they got hosed there. There probably should have been a 4 or 5, and I think that's realistic. I think they pulled a solid upset over Villanova. That should have probably been a Sweet 16 game. That probably should have been this game, realistically, if the seeds were real in terms of how they're playing. But here we are, Sweet 16. They're playing a Florida team who, again, lost their big on the inside defensively. So this Florida team is still semi-deep-ish, kind of, sort of. Not really. They really want to play 6 guys, but they have bodies to run 7 or 8 out there. They like to pressure you. They're not a good offensive team. They don't have a bunch of three-point shooters. Casey Hill is the Casey Hill-Bronson Koenig matchup at point guard. I loved Casey Hill coming out of high school because he was just super quick and athletic and super fun to watch with the basketball because of how fast he is. So it'll be interesting to see Hill and Koenig match up against each other, but Hill's not a scorer. He's not going to put in 15. Koenig's easily going to have more points. Casey Hill can distribute the ball. He can dribble really fast with the ball. But this Florida team, from a talent perspective, is just they're a 4-ish, 5-ish seed for a reason. And they played excellent defense against Virginia, but Virginia struggled offensively all year. So, Florida got past Eastern Tennessee State in the first round. That's all fine and dandy. Their defense is great. Second round, defense is great again, but they still only put up 65 points. I expect this game to probably be in the 60s, maybe a 71-63 final score in favor of Wisconsin, I guess, if I had to pick it. I just like Wisconsin's talent. I like their overall team. Casey Hill is interesting for Florida, but since their big man went out with an injury for the season, it's just not the same Florida team. They had a legitimate shot at a Final Four when they were healthy. Now it's just they're riding their defense, and sure, with the rest of these teams in the Eastern region, I guess Florida can make some magic happen, kind of like how South Carolina is, but Wisconsin's the most complete team of these 4 left in the East.
This could be a 48-44 game, Kevin. It really could be, if you think about it. Wisconsin has offensive woes at times. Florida has offensive woes at times, and they both play good defense. This really, I wasn't joking. It might be the first team to 50 wins this game, Kevin. If we go out and start watching this game and the shooting performances is bad in the first 5-6 minutes, you may see literally a 50-point game because their defenses are very good. I give both defenses credit. It's going to be which of these teams can get on that hot streak and, I guess, shoot more average than the other, because I'd mentioned this. I'm a Wisconsin fan. That's why I said I'm rearranging my whole day just to be able to watch the game. But when I look at it, this Wisconsin team, Kevin, can go through drought after drought after drought after drought because they'll get into trying to shoot their way out of a slump, and that's not what you can do if you're Wisconsin. They've got to work the ball inside out. And what happens, though, for Wisconsin, even when they do that inside out, I still hold my breath, Kevin, because even when they get open looks, they don't drain them all the time. And if that happens tonight, you're going to see a rock'em, sock'em, claw'em out 48-44 game. It's going to remind you of an old Princeton game from 1950. That's what it'll remind you of. Because both teams, I think, rebound well. Both teams play good defense. They're gonna get at you. They're going to pressure you. And if you're not shooting well, it could be a very low-scoring game. But on the flip side, if Wisconsin gets hot, if Happ has his way inside, if Nigel Hayes takes advantage of the matchup and, can shoot from the outside or go into the post, and then Bronson Koenig continues his moons out shooting, I could see Wisconsin getting 70, 75 points. But it all depends. And part of me is saying this is going to be a low-scoring game. So you know what that means, Kevin? This game is going to be like 85-80, and there's going to be no defense on the court tonight. I have been totally wrong this whole tournament with my predictions. Baylor, South Carolina, I got nothing to say. I'm sure the NCAA is looking at all the matchups going, how can we increase the rating for this game? Because the only fans watching this game, Baylor fans, South Carolina fans. There'll be others watching, don't get me wrong, but really not intriguing to me. So that's part of the reason I can. Thing is, though, I like the other game I'll miss will be what? North Carolina's an early game, right? North Carolina, Butler. And then I think –
yeah. Yep.
And then UCLA and Kentucky will be going on a little bit before the Badger game because the Badgers are the last game of the night. So,
right.
Yeah, I'll still be able to do double screen and watch part of those games. So my two intriguing games are going to work out for me. Like I said, what will happen is I'm going to get up from my little sleep there, Kevin, and I'm going to see Butler winning, and then I'm going to, watch a game and I'll be saying to myself at halftime, why in the heck did I do this when it's 19-17 at halftime?
Well, it certainly could be.
I think you were probably at Whitewater, Kevin, a few years back when that was a typical Badger team holding teams to under 30 points in the first half. It was.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember what year it was, but it was a year where a typical Badger game at halftime was like 26-20. And that's the way the Badgers played. That's when Bo Ryan had that team like really cranked up on defense. And, I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, they just played shut you down defense. But I'll tell you what, Kevin, it's still basketball. But I can see myself at halftime saying I really did this to watch this game. Or I could be wrong, and it just could be three-pointer after three-pointer, good inside-out play, team shooting 60% from the field. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But what are your last words for the fans, Kevin, as we preview tonight's games?
Last words, I mean, we gave our predictions, and that obviously doesn't mean too much with how Troy and I have done this year in our brackets, respectively. But I think that if Florida, Wisconsin get to the 80s, then that'll just about sum up our little tournament run as far as picks go. South Carolina, Baylor, I mean, if I'm to pick the game, like I said before, I think a couple days ago I picked Baylor just because I think their defense can create more issues for a really bad South Carolina offense. South Carolina has to get out in transition in order to score a bunch of points, and I just don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going with Baylor, barely. But really, I mean, going forward, the rest of this tournament, the Kansas games are going to be really interesting to watch. The Gonzaga games are going to be really interesting to watch because I know a bunch of people in Wisconsin, and because this is a Big Ten show, they're the last team left. Wisconsin games are going to be interesting. I'm a Duke fan. I sure as heck hope Butler beats North Carolina by 60 points tonight. I don't think it's going to happen. But
come on,
that's the dream.
Now you're talking like that West Virginia guy, Kevin. I think West Virginia's better than Gonzaga on paper. Come on now.
I don't think it's going to happen, but that's where my rooting interest lies.
You need to call a radio show down there and say Butler's winning by 60.
Yeah.
Just do it. All right.
Although now I'm in Florida, so I need to talk up Wisconsin and how great Wisconsin is.
Oh, jeez. Well, this show is one very awry, and that's what happens when your brackets are busted. I mean, you can't gloat, you can't brag. You can only use humor and sarcasm, and that's where Kevin and I have got to, folks. Sarcasm and humor, because we are trying to cover up our emotional scars from our ridiculously bad brackets that have been busted. So hope your brackets are doing better. Make sure you find us on Twitter, TroyRobert967. I am putting the Twitter poll out. within actually the next 5 minutes. You're listening to the show much later, so that Twitter poll will be up. Go vote, Troy Robert 967. How is your bracket doing? But for the youngster, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter, I am Old Man Troy. We'll get back with you with another episode tomorrow after Friday night games are complete. Have a good day, everyone.